Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever felt like your own mind is quite literally a battlefield? Well, according to the source material we're exploring today, which is a really fascinating deep dive interview covering theology and the unseen realm, that feeling might be a lot more literal than you'd think. The speaker proposes this completely startling concept that the human mind is actually prime real estate in an invisible cosmic war. So today in this explainer, we're going to impartially unpack this perspective and we'll visualize exactly how this hidden conflict supposedly operates behind the scenes of our everyday lives.
Here's our roadmap for the explainer. We're going to start with the internal battle for the soul, then zoom out to the celestial hierarchy, trace Nephilim and demon origins, explore the alien delusion, and finally detail waging spiritual warfare.
Section 1. Battle for the Soul, the Internal War.
According to the speaker, we are essentially composed of parts that are constantly at odds with one another. On one side, you've got the born-again spirit, which the source describes as perfected, secure, and righteous. But then, on the exact opposite side is the unsaved flesh. And that's described as inherently sinful, driven by an insatiable hunger, and just completely ruled by carnal lusts. And this brilliantly illustrates how these two elements are in a fierce, non-stop tug-of-war. They're constantly fighting to influence the ultimate prize, which is the soul, the very place that houses your mind, your will, and your emotions.
To explain just how tightly bound these internal elements actually are, the source uses a really striking analogy. They say, the spirit and the soul come together like water and wet. Think about it. If you jump into the water, you're inevitably going to get wet. You can conceptually make a distinction between the two, but you can't easily pull them apart. The text argues they're so intricately linked that literally only the divine word has the power to divide the soul from the spirit.
Moving on to Section 2, the Celestial Hierarchy. Unseen Combatants.
Zooming out to the actual combatants in this war, the source maps out a highly organized, almost military-like ranking of celestial beings. At the top, you have archangels like Michael and Gabriel, acting as chief authorities or messengers. Above them are the seraphim, who are described as standing directly before the divine throne. And then you've got these various ranks governing the spiritual realm: thrones, dominions, and principalities. Now, what's super interesting here is that the speaker specifically points out a major misconception about Lucifer. According to their breakdown of the text, Lucifer was actually never an archangel. He was a cherub, a high-ranking, four-faced, four-winged entity. Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is how the source categorizes the dark factions on Earth that align against humanity. They break it into three distinct groups. First, you have Satanists, who, surprisingly enough, are described here as atheists. They don't actually believe in a literal devil, they just seek to gratify the flesh. Then you have devil worshippers. These are the actual theists who believe in and overtly worship the entity. And finally, Luciferians. They're categorized as those seeking hidden wisdom and enlightenment, a group the speaker provocatively ties to secret societies like Freemasonry.
All right, Section 3. Nephilim and Demon Origins. Origin of Spirits.
Now, you might have commonly heard the idea that demons are just fallen angels, but the source argues strongly against this, pointing neutrally to their physical differences as evidence right out of the biblical text. Angels, you see, are described as having celestial bodies of their own, with the power to temporarily transform into human shapes. They don't need to possess anyone. Demons, on the other hand, are categorized as completely bodiless spirits, and because they have no physical form of their own, they are absolutely desperate to possess human bodies just to interact with the physical world. Let's move to the chronological origin of all this and see how it builds. The source traces demon origins all the way back to the days of Noah. It claims that celestial beings known as Watchers actually mated with human women, which gave birth to an unnatural, giant hybrid race called the Nephilim. When the Great Flood came, it wiped out the physical bodies of these giants, but because they were part celestial, their spirits couldn't just cease to exist. Therefore, the source argues, the surviving disembodied spirits of those ancient giants are exactly what we now refer to as demons. And this ancient hybrid theory leads the speaker to pose a truly provocative question. Were ancient megaliths built with celestial assistance? When you look at structures like the Pyramids of Giza or Stonehenge, they boast a level of architectural precision that honestly still baffles modern science. The source suggests that interdimensional, heavenly knowledge, shared unlawfully by these watchers or giants, could actually be the secret behind humanity's most inexplicable ancient monuments.
Which brings us to Section 4, the Alien Delusion. Celestial Beings.
The speaker presents a highly unconventional explanation for extraterrestrials. According to this source, aliens are not biological beings traveling across the galaxy from other planets. Instead, things like alien abductions and UFO sightings are actually interactions with celestial beings, meaning either angels or demons. The source argues they are simply operating in temporary physical forms, which they describe as Earth suits, allowing them to physically manifest and manipulate our natural realm. To back up this perspective, the source outlines a whole variety of modern evidence. They point to recent government UFO disclosures and those leaked military pilot videos showing crafts that totally defy the known laws of physics. The speaker also suggests that pop culture, specifically pointing to Hollywood and Spielberg films, is intentionally conditioning humanity to accept these entities as friendly space travelers. Ultimately, the source claims this is all just setting the stage for a great delusion, a massive end-times deception where demonic entities will basically masquerade as alien saviors to trick humanity.
Section 5. Waging spiritual warfare. Fighting back.
Zooming back in from global conspiracies to the individual level, the source breaks down how this invisible war is practically fought, outlining 4 escalating levels of demonic attack. It starts with obsession, which is a direct attack on the mind and your thoughts. If left unchecked, it escalates to oppression, which locks a person into carnal habits and toxic cycles. Step 3 is possession, a full hostile takeover. But the speaker warns of a terrifying, less discussed 4th stage, integration. This is where a person, often through severe unresolved trauma, actually welcomes the demonic influence, creating a deliberate, open agreement to let it co-pilot their life. To combat these kinds of attacks, the source points to a really fundamental principle. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. According to the text, the words you speak aren't just sounds vibrating in the air. They are literal, spiritual weapons. The speaker believes that spoken words actually release immortal combat forces in the spiritual realm. This means you are actively directing the invisible battle based entirely on what you verbally affirm or renounce. So, the crucial point is how you actually use those words to deploy your defenses. The practical strategy outlined here clarifies that believers shouldn't just run around trying to command angels directly based on their own personal will. Instead, the text points out that angels heed the voice of His word. The argument is that when you speak, confess, and live out scriptural truths, celestial forces are automatically dispatched to minister on your behalf, effectively fighting the battle for you.
All of this leaves us with one final, really profound question to consider based on today's source material. Who are you allowing to plant their flag in the prime real estate of your soul? Whether you view this material as a literal, historical map of cosmic warfare, or maybe as a powerful psychological metaphor for the battles we fight inside ourselves every single day, it challenges us to deeply examine the thoughts we entertain and the words we speak. So, what invisible influences are you actively feeding today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what's beneath the surface.